Over the past couple of years, there have been a certain number of you that have asked me to do NBA mock drafts, and I haven't really been that particularly interested in doing so I haven't done them. Well, this year, I'm giving it a shot, I guess, see what type of reaction I get, see what type of response I get, see what type of interest level I even have in doing it. So here I am with my first of what will be at least a couple of 2015 NBA mock drafts. Now, on the heels of last night's NBA draft lottery, this will be a lottery version, meaning that I will only be mocking the first 14 picks of the 2015 NBA draft. And you can see those picks in the description box down below. So let's talk about my first NBA mock draft of 2015. We'll start off with the #1 overall pick. What a novel concept. The team with the worst record ends up with the #1 overall pick. Doesn't happen very much in the lottery era of the NBA, that's for damn sure. If I remember correctly, the last time it happened, I believe, was Orlando back in 2004. I think that's when it was. So it doesn't happen every day. So you got the Minnesota Timberwolves, who had a bad season. You know, injuries, other things happen. But this is a team whose future doesn't exactly look all that terrible. You've got Ricky Rubio. You've got the newest rookie of the year in Andrew Wiggins. There's some talent there. There's some star power there potentially. But they need a guy that can help kind of put the pieces together. They need a guy that can help take them to that next level. And a lot of people will be talking about the debate between taking Karl Anthony Towns and Jahlil Okafor, #1 overall. And I think, frankly, for the Timberwolves, the decision is very simple. They need somebody that can man the 4 and the 5 spot, and I think Anthony Towns does that better than Okafor. They need somebody that can bring some defense to the low post, and again, that's something I think Anthony Towns can do better than Okafor. And when you look at the fact that Minnesota has a lot of money tied up into a center already, $12 million plus a year, isn't it, to Pekovic over each of the next 3 seasons, does it really make that much sense to take a guy who primarily is only going to have to be able to play the 5 in Okafor when there's no guarantee you could trade away Pekovic's contract? Now, granted, you know, maybe they would be able to, and you sit there and say if Okafor is the better player on your board, that's who you take. But in this particular case, I just think on several different levels, the guy that makes the most sense for the Minnesota Timberwolves, at least in my mind right now, is Karl Anthony Towns, because he can play the 4 when your center's healthy, and when the inevitable injury does come, you could sit there and plug in Towns at the 5. Now we go to the Lakers at #2. And a lot of people will sit there and say, well, if Okafor is there, Okafor is the guy. Now, I would say if Okafor went #1, the Lakers probably would take Karl Anthony Towns #2. However, I don't think it's a guarantee that Okafor would be the guy at #2 for the Lakers if Towns went #1. Now, I could envision a little bit of a drop for Okafor, maybe not quite to the level of, let's say, a Brook Lopez several years back where he ended up going 10th overall. But when you look at Okafor, here's a guy that brings a lot of skill on the offensive end to the center position, but really doesn't bring much on the defensive end. And in today's NBA, such a guard and perimeter-driven league, do you necessarily have to have that dominant big guy down low in terms of offensively, especially if they don't bring much defensively? Now, maybe Okafor will bring some defense at the NBA level down the road, but at this point in time, when you're looking at a Lakers team, you know, it's great that in your history you've had great big men like George Mikan and Wilt Chamberlain, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Shaquille O'Neal. But you don't have to have those type of guys in order to win a championship. You just don't. You look at the teams in the Western Conference and Eastern Conference Finals. The Warriors' 2 best players are guards. You know, the Rockets' best player by far is a guard. You know, you look at the Cleveland Cavaliers. Their 2 best players are a perimeter 3 in LeBron James and a point guard in Kyrie Irving. You look at the Atlanta Hawks. You could argue maybe that their top 2 players are at low post guys and Al Horford and Paul Millsap. However, I would argue their 2 most important players to their success are their point guard and Jeff Teague, and their wing player, their shooter, and Kyle Korver. You know, these teams, none of them have a truly dominant big man. Like I said, the Hawks arguably have the best front court, but they might not even make it out of the Eastern Conference. They might lose to a team in the Cavaliers whose 2 best players are on the wing and on the perimeter. To me, the Lakers should be looking at guys like Mudiay, D'Angelo Russell, or even a Justise Winslow. Frankly, if I'm looking at a Duke prospect right now, I like Justise Winslow more than I like Jahlil Okafor at the NBA level. I think Justise Winslow's best basketball is clearly ahead of him, and I think he has the most upside of the top 3 Duke prospects between him, Okafor, and Tyus Jones. But at this moment, I do have Okafor going #2 to the Lakers. It wouldn't be that surprising if they took him, I could understand to a degree why they would take him. However, again, I emphasize, I don't think that's necessarily the right choice for the Los Angeles Lakers. You know, ask the Portland Trail Blazers way back when you've got Kevin Durant on the board and you take Greg Oden. It's a perimeter-driven league, and you have to have those guys. And, you know, the Lakers are in this draft position for a reason because, frankly, they don't have those guys. And even Kobe Bryant comes back healthy this next season. He's at the end of his road, and they really don't have much else there. They need playmakers outside, plain and simple. Now, for the 76ers and the Knicks, I think they've got to be smart enough, you would hope, to understand that they've got to get point guards because, again, it's a point guard-driven league, and they play in an Eastern Conference where they have to deal with guys like Kyrie Irving and Derrick Rose and what have you. The bot, Jeff Teague, they need point guards. And it'll be interesting to see if one or both of them ends up coming out of this point guard in this draft. I look at the 76ers. To me, for some reason, I think Mudiay is their guy more than D'Angelo Russell. I think the Knicks would probably be ecstatic if D'Angelo Russell was there at number 4. I think the point guard from Ohio State has star power written all over him. Some of you might be surprised to see Kristaps Porzingis, the stretch 4, who's playing in Spain right now, going to Orlando at number 5. The stretch 4 is a very important position. Again, we're talking about the perimeter basis of today's NBA, and those stretch 4s, you know, can cause defensive nightmares for opposing teams on several different levels. From that player's ability to stretch the floor, from that guy's ability to be able to shoot from the perimeter and open things up down low, from that guy's ability to play in the pick and roll, to be able to handle the ball. A guy like Porzingis could potentially be that guy, and at 7'1", he could cause all types of problems. Yes, he could just be an Andrea Bargnani, but he could also be a guy that could do a lot of things for an Orlando team that already has some nice young pieces that are developing on the wing and on the perimeter. Now, to me, one of the big steals of this lottery would be Justise Winslow to the Sacramento Kings at number 6. You could pair him with McLemore, and you've got a really nice tandem out on the wings. To me, it's just an example of clearly the best player available on the board. You've got to take him. And like I said, for my money, I would be taking Justise Winslow perhaps even as early as number 2 if I'm the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, other picks that kind of stand out here to me, you look at the Denver Nuggets, they pretty much need help everywhere. You know, for me, they might take a guy like Myles Turner out of Texas. You look at Detroit, you know, they could be losing Greg Monroe via free agency. They might be looking for a 4 that they could pair with their center, and Andre Drummond and Willie Cauley-Stein would seem to make a lot of sense. A guy that doesn't have to have the ball in his hand a ton, but he's a guy that is athletic enough to do some things, especially on the defensive end. A guy like Hezonja, that's playing in Spain right now, makes a lot of sense for the Charlotte the Charlotte Hornets, because, again, they just need help everywhere. Frankly, but they really need help on the perimeter in terms of guys that can actually create their own shot and guys that can shoot. So again, here's my picks down in the description box below. You're welcome to let me know your thoughts on my first 2015 NBA mock draft in the comment section below. Do you agree with my assessment that, you know, just because a big man's there, it doesn't mean that you should necessarily take them? Do you agree with me that the importance of taking a big man is overrated in today's NBA because of the way the NBA game is? Or do you think I'm insane or nuts and think the Lakers would be insane or nuts if they did pass on a guy like Jahlil, Okafor, or even a Karl Anthony Towns with the number 2 overall pick? And if you were the Minnesota Timberwolves, who would you take with the first overall selection in the 2015 NBA draft? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comment section down below.